"You're giving away food again, Clara? We can't keep doing this," the diner manager snapped, his tone sharp as he glared across the counter. The waitress didn't hesitate. She'd just paid for a little girl's meal out of her own pocket. Clara Evans was serving tables in a small Ohio diner, struggling to make ends meet, when a group of Marines walked in, and everything changed. Who was this girl? What brought the Marines there? What's the kindest thing you've ever done for a stranger? Let's find out. Welcome to True Quiet Stories. Let's uncover what happened in this story. If you love these stories, you can support the channel by liking and subscribing. In a small Ohio town, the air carried the scent of coffee and nostalgia. Clara Evans worked there. She was 37 years old, a waitress at Daisy's Diner, a cozy spot on Main Street where the jukebox played old country tunes. Clara's shifts were long, filled with pouring coffee, serving pies, and chatting with regulars, her hands steady despite the ache in her feet. She wore her auburn hair in a loose ponytail, her apron faded from years of use, her smile warm despite the exhaustion etched into her features. The diner was a snapshot of a bygone era, its red vinyl booths cracked but polished, its checkered floors scrubbed clean every night, the walls lined with black and white photos of Willow Grove's better days, grainy images of harvest festivals, 4th of July parades, and smiling families outside the now-closed factory. On busy mornings, the clatter of plates mixed with the hum of conversation, locals trading stories over pancakes while truckers sipped black coffee at the counter, their CB radios crackling softly in the background. Clara moved through it all with a quiet grace, balancing trays and refilling mugs, her presence a steady comfort in a town that had weathered more than its share of hard times. Clara lived in a tiny apartment above the diner, a drafty space with a creaky bed, a single lamp, and a window overlooking the quiet street where the occasional train whistle broke the stillness of the night. She'd grown up in Willow Grove, a town of just over 3,000 people, where the factories had closed a decade ago, leaving behind boarded-up storefronts and a community that clung to its traditions. Her parents had passed away when she was in her early 20s, her father in a car accident on a rain-slicked road, her mother from a long illness that drained their savings, leaving her to navigate life on her own. She'd dreamed of becoming a nurse once, inspired by the hospital staff who'd cared for her mother, but the diner job was all she could manage after their deaths, a way to pay the bills and stay close to the memories of her childhood. Every evening, as she climbed the narrow stairs to her apartment, she'd pause to water a small potted plant on the windowsill, a gift from a regular customer who'd noticed her love for flowers, a rare touch of color in her otherwise gray. Routine. Clara's life in Willow Grove was a quiet struggle, shaped by a town that had once thrived on industry but now leaned on its small businesses to survive. Daisy's Diner had been a fixture for generations, a gathering place where the mayor held court over breakfast, where high schoolers shared milkshakes after football games, where Clara's mother had worked before her. Recently, the diner had been hit hard by the annual county fair moving to a neighboring town, a decision that siphoned off the usual summer crowd and left the register lighter than ever. Clara felt the pinch more than most, often skipping her own meals to stretch her budget, her tips barely enough to cover the rising rent Carl, the manager, kept threatening to increase. Despite the challenges, she found joy in the small connections she made with her customers. Old Mr. Thompson, a widower who came in every morning for coffee and a slice of pie, always left her a quarter tip with a wink, calling her the best part of my day. On quieter afternoons, Clara would slip him an extra slice of pie, knowing he couldn't afford it but needed the comfort. These acts of kindness were her way of holding on to the warmth her parents had taught her, a warmth she refused to let the town's struggles extinguish. Clara had learned resilience early on, shaped by a childhood of modest means but boundless love. Her father had been a mechanic, a man with calloused hands who could fix anything, from a broken engine to a child's toy, his gentle laugh a sound Clara still missed on lonely nights. Her mother had been her rock, facing her illness with a quiet strength that Clara tried to emulate, even when the hospital bills piled up and the future felt uncertain. After their deaths, Clara had faced another blow, a brief engagement to a man who'd promised her a new start, but left when her grief became too heavy, unable to handle the quiet evenings she spent staring at old family photos. Now, at 37, Clara kept one of those photos on her nightstand, her parents' smiling faces a daily reminder of the love that had shaped her. She poured that love into her work at the diner, finding purpose in the small acts of care she could offer, even when her own life felt like a constant uphill climb. Daisy's Diner was her sanctuary, its familiar hum a comfort on the hardest days, a place where she could make a difference, even if just one meal at a time. The lunchtime rush at Daisy's Diner was in full swing that humid July afternoon, the air thick with the aroma of sizzling bacon and brewing coffee. The jukebox hummed a Johnny Cash tune, its melody weaving through the clatter of plates and the chatter of locals crowded into the red vinyl booths. Clara Evans moved swiftly behind the counter, her apron pockets jingling with loose change, as she poured coffee for a trucker at the bar. She wiped a bead of sweat from her brow, her hands quick but careful, as she balanced a tray of burgers and fries, delivering it to a family of 4 near the window. The diner's small fan whirred overhead, offering little relief from the summer heat, but Clara's smile never faltered, her warmth a beacon for the regulars who filled the space with their laughter and stories. She glanced toward the corner booth, her gaze softening as she spotted a small figure sitting alone, a girl who'd been coming in every few days for the past month, always with the same worn backpack and a hesitant look in her eyes. Clara had noticed her the first time she'd walked in, her sneakers scuffed and her ponytail uneven, ordering the cheapest item on the menu, a single grilled cheese sandwich, before counting out coins with a furrowed brow. The girl's name was Emma Riley, though Clara didn't know that yet, didn't know the story behind those cautious eyes, or the way she always sat with her back to the wall, as if ready to bolt at any moment. Emma was 10 years old, a child who lived with her struggling mother in a trailer park on the outskirts of Willow Grove, a girl whose father had been a Marine, a man who'd served in Iraq in 2008, who'd carried out missions he couldn't forget. Emma's father, Lieutenant Nathan Riley, had been a hero, leading his unit through a dangerous operation in Fallujah, ensuring their safe evacuation under heavy fire, his own life taken by a roadside bomb days later. He'd left behind a legacy of courage, a Navy Cross tucked away in a drawer, and a family that struggled to move forward without him. Emma's mother, Lisa, worked late shifts at a warehouse, her wages barely covering rent, leaving Emma to fend for herself most afternoons. The girl had learned to stretch every dollar, often skipping meals to save for the next day, her small frame a testament to the hunger she hid behind a brave smile. She'd found Daisy's Diner by chance, drawn by the smell of fresh pies wafting. Through the open door, a rare treat she could sometimes afford if she collected enough change from the park fountain. Emma sat quietly that day, her grilled cheese untouched as she stared at the cracked tabletop, her fingers tracing the edge of a faded placemat. Clara approached with a glass of water, setting it down gently before sliding into the booth across from her. "Not hungry today, sweetheart?" she asked, her voice soft, as she noticed the girl's downcast expression. Emma shook her head, her cheeks flushing as she mumbled, "I don't have enough today." Clara's heart clenched, her mind flashing to the meager tips in her apron, the rent she still owed, the dinner she'd planned to skip. Without a second thought, she reached into her pocket, pulling out a crumpled $5 bill, her last one for the week, and tucked it under the plate. "It's on me," she said with a wink, standing up before Emma could protest. The girl's eyes widened, a flicker of gratitude breaking through her guarded demeanor, her small hand reaching for the sandwich as Clara walked away. A quiet victory. In her step, Carl, the diner manager, had been watching from the kitchen door, his arms crossed, his frown deepening with every step Clara took. He waited until she reached the counter before pulling her aside, his voice low but biting. "We're not a charity, Clara. You can't keep doing this," he said, gesturing toward Emma's booth. Clara met his gaze, her jaw set with determination. "She's hungry, Carl. I couldn't just watch her leave like that," she replied, her tone firm but calm. Carl sighed, running a hand through his thinning hair, his frustration tempered by the knowledge that Clara's heart was bigger than the diner's budget could afford. He waved her off with a grumble, muttering about inventory costs as he disappeared into the back, leaving Clara to return to her work, her mind already on the next table, her resolve unshaken. Across the diner, a regular customer sat at the bar, nursing a cup of coffee as he watched the exchange unfold. His name was David Harper, a 55-year-old mechanic who'd been coming to Daisy's for years, always leaving a generous tip despite his own tight budget. David had a quiet demeanor, his calloused hands a testament to long days at the auto shop, but his eyes held a sharpness that missed little. He'd noticed Emma before, her worn backpack and in the way she counted her coins, but today something else caught his attention, the glint of a dog-tag necklace peeking out from her collar as she adjusted her shirt. David's breath caught, his mind racing back to his own days in the Marine Corps, to a time when he'd served alongside men who wore tags just like that. He set his mug down, his fingers brushing against the faded tattoo on his forearm, a Marine Corps emblem he'd gotten after his last deployment. Leaning closer, he called out to Clara as she passed by, his voice low but urgent. "That girl, where'd she get that dog tag?" he asked, nodding toward Emma. Clara paused, glancing back at the booth, her brow furrowing. "I don't know," she admitted, her curiosity piqued. "She's been coming in for a while, but she doesn't talk much." David didn't press further, but a spark of recognition had already ignited in his mind. A memory of a name, a story, a brother in arms he'd thought long lost to time. He pulled out his phone, his fingers steady as he scrolled through his contacts, landing on a number he hadn't called in years. The diner hummed around him, oblivious to the chain of events he was about to set in motion, a chain that would bring the past crashing into the present in a way no one could have predicted. Clara returned to her work unaware of the storm brewing. Just beyond the diner's doors, her small act of kindness, a ripple that would soon become a wave, one that would change her life, Emma's life, and the heart of Willow Grove itself. The hum of Daisy's diner softened as the lunch rush faded that humid July afternoon, the jukebox now playing a gentle Patsy Cline ballad that mingled with the clink of dishes being cleared. Clara Evans stood behind the counter, wiping down, the worn formica surface, her apron now lighter after giving her last few dollars to cover Emma Riley's meal. She glanced toward the corner booth, where the 10-year-old girl sat finishing her grilled cheese sandwich, a faint smile on her lips. As she sipped her water, her worn backpack tucked beside her like a shield. Clara's heart lifted at the sight, a small victory against the hunger she'd seen in Emma's eyes. But her mind was already on the evening shift, the rent she'd need to scrape together, the quiet dinner she'd skip to make ends meet. The diner's regulars lingered over their coffee, their conversations a low murmur, farmers debating crop prices, a young couple planning their weekend, an elderly woman flipping through a newspaper at the bar. Outside, the summer sun dipped lower, casting golden streaks through the diner's windows, the light catching on the black and white photos of Willow Grove's past that lined the walls. Emma looked up from her plate, her fingers brushing the dog-tag necklace she always wore, a nervous habit Clara had noticed over the past few weeks. She slid out of the booth, her sneakers scuffing the checkered floor as she approached the counter, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you, Miss Clara," she said, her cheeks flushing as she clutched her backpack straps. Clara waved, a hand her smile warm. "Any time, sweetheart. You come back tomorrow, okay?" Emma nodded, her gaze darting to the door as if expecting someone before she slipped outside, the bell above the entrance jingling softly in her wake. Clara watched her go, a pang of worry settling in her chest, but her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of heavy footsteps approaching the diner, a steady rhythm that seemed out of place in the sleepy town. The door swung open, and a hush fell over the diner as a group of U.S. Marines in dress uniforms stepped inside, their polished shoes gleaming against the faded floor, their faces set with a quiet determination that drew every eye in the room. Clara froze, her rag still in hand, her breath catching as she took in their presence. 6 men and women, their medals catching the light, their postures straight as they scanned the space. The regulars turned in their seats, cups halfway to their lips, their whispers replaced by a stunned silence. Carl, the manager, emerged from the kitchen, his apron streaked with flour, his brow furrowing as he crossed his arms. "Can I help you folks?" he asked, his voice gruff but tinged with curiosity. The lead Marine, a woman with sharp features and a calm authority, stepped forward, her gaze sweeping the diner before landing on Clara. "We're looking for a girl named Emma Riley," she said, her tone carrying a weight that made Clara's heart skip a beat, "and the waitress who's been helping her." Clara set the rag down, her hands trembling slightly as she wiped them on her apron. "That's me," she said, her voice steady, despite the sudden knot in her stomach. "Emma was just here. She left a minute ago. Is everything okay?" The Marine nodded, her expression softening as she gestured toward the door. "She's outside. We've already spoken to her mother. We're here because of her father, Lieutenant Nathan Riley." The name hung in the air, unfamiliar to Clara, but heavy with meaning, a name that carried a story she couldn't yet grasp. The Marine turned to the crowd, her voice rising to address everyone. "Lieutenant Riley was a Marine who gave his life in Iraq, saving his unit in Fallujah. We've come to honor his legacy and to thank the woman who's shown kindness to his daughter." The diner erupted into murmurs, the regulars exchanging wide-eyed glances, some pulling out their phones to capture the moment, others leaning forward with newfound respect. The Marine stepped aside as Emma re-entered, her mother Lisa at her side, both of their faces etched with a mix of awe and nervousness. Lisa, a tired woman in a faded warehouse uniform, held Emma's hand tightly, her eyes brimming with tears as she looked at the Marines. The lead Marine knelt before Emma, holding out a small velvet box. "This belonged to your father," she said gently, opening it to reveal a Navy cross, its ribbon vibrant against the black lining. "He'd want you to have it." Emma's fingers brushed the metal, her lips trembling as she whispered, "Thank you." The crowd broke into applause, some standing to clap, their voices a chorus of admiration for a hero they'd never known, a hero whose daughter had sat among them, unnoticed, until this moment. Clara's eyes welled up as she watched, her hand pressed to her chest, the weight of the moment sinking in. The Marine rose, turning to her with a nod of gratitude. "We've heard about what you've done for Emma," she said, her voice carrying across the diner. "Your kindness hasn't gone unnoticed." She handed Clara an envelope, her smile warm. "This is from the Marine Corps community, a fund, to help you start that program you've always wanted, to feed families in need here in Willow Grove." Clara opened the envelope, her breath catching, as she saw the check inside, enough to turn her dream of a community food program into reality. The diner erupted into cheers, regulars clapping her on the back, Carl wiping a tear from his eye as he muttered, "Well, I'll be damned." Willow Grove would never forget that day, a day when a small act of kindness brought a hero's legacy to light, a day that reminded them all of the power of compassion, a day that turned Daisy's Diner into a beacon of hope for a town in need. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to True Quiet Stories for more untold tales of valor. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a story. Thank you for watching. See you in the next story.